What's going on, son?
Just had dinner. That's pretty much it.
Nice. Episode 1 of Around the Table.
Yeah.
Even though we're not around a table, we're
No, it's
three. We're 300.
we're
It's a metaphoric table,
yeah metaphoric table, a virtual table.
virtual table. There you go.
Yeah,
We're what, 300 miles away?
just about. Well, not even 190.
Okay. All right.
I yeah, I gotta know that for when I go on Liberty and put in the
Yeah.
miles how far I'm going.
Plus, you drive it twice a week at least these days.
Yeah.
So tell
All right,
everybody who
guy.
you are.
So I'm Vince Jairdullo, United States Marine, currently a corporal, assigned to the Silent Drill Platoon. Just took over the billet as drill master.
Stationed down at Marine Corps Barracks, D.C., right?
Yep.
And I'm his father, Jay Jardullo, retired police officer turned wrestling coach, husband, father of 5. And
All
this
right.
is Around the Table.
Yep. I got a question to get us started here.
All right, what do you got for me?
If you could tell your 20-year-old self one thing, what would it be?
To not fear rejection.
Can you elaborate on it?
Sure, to just go for it. Whether it's ask the pretty girl out, ask for the job, you know, go for a big, hairy, audacious goal. You have something you want to do to not fear rejection and just go after it, because you're not going to be any worse. If the answer is no, you're not going to be any worse off, right? In most cases. A funny example, last year at the state wrestling tournament, there was these young kids from Southern, I think that's down the shore somewhere, high school, sitting in front of me. And this one kid was kind of flirting with this girl from another school. And I could tell he liked her, and the girl got up to leave, and I could tell he regretted not saying anything to her. So I whispered in his ear, I said, go ask her for her number. The worst you can say is no. The kid ran out, came back. He couldn't have been happier, right? She said yes. But what would have happened if she said no? Nothing. He would have came back and watched the rest of the wrestling, right? So if I could go back and tell 30 years and tell my 20-year-old self something, it would be, don't fear rejection. Don't be afraid of the word no. I got a question for you. This podcast was your idea. What made you want to have these conversations?
I think what got me thinking about it first was watching your episode with Ryan, just seeing that you have a lot of things to share with the world, a lot of good views. I think a lot of times I've told like people close to me this, that my dad is kind of the person that has a lot of valuable things, but kind of just not like lowers yourself to a lower expectation of yourself or whatever. I don't really know if that's the right way, but kind of just you don't give yourself enough credit. So I thought this would be a good time to show that you do add value to the world and that you do have a lot of good experiences that turn into valuable lessons for people like myself that hopefully won't have to learn it the hard way as much as you had to.
Yeah, and listen, I appreciate that, and I say all the time, and I did think I said it on Ryan's podcast, the Order of Man podcast with Ryan Mickler. I think I said it, and if I didn't, I'll say it here. I truly believe that all of us as humans, but I'm in the kind of men's development world with Ryan there, and with 3 young boys, I take that role as a father and very seriously, and I just wish we could see ourselves sometimes the way other people see us, and I think we'd give ourselves so much more credit. Often, and I'm guilty of this, is we're our own worst critics, right? And we focus on the negative. We need to. I know I need in my life to focus less on the negatives and learn from the negatives, right? Learn from the mistakes, learn from the failures, learn from the struggles. But then once you learn the lesson, you move on from it. The and then revel or use the positives and the wins to propel you forward in life. So I appreciate you saying that, and I appreciate you wanting to do this with me. And I think it'll give you and I both a different perspective of each other. And I look forward to hearing. Listen, at 20 years old, you may not realize it, but you have value to add to the world as well, especially with you're a little further along in life at 20 than a lot of other 20-year-olds who are maybe not in the Marine Corps and experiencing the things you're experiencing. So don't undervalue the value you add to the world.
I can agree with that. I think I can provide a little bit of a different answer to that question, or for what you brought up about not always seeing ourselves as other people see us. Right? And it just kind of reminds me of when I was a first year, or my time in the platoon when I just got there, and you kind of look up to these third years and you see them as kind of just a figure. You don't really see them as human beings, and you kind of think they're like this untouchable thing. And then now you get to their point where you're in your third year, you're the drill master or the rifle inspector, or some type of billet higher up that, as a first year, you kind of you can't really grasp the understanding of it. And just now being, I don't really understand why I felt like that, because now I just feel like my normal self, but I also keep that in the back of my mind, is that's how these guys kind of see you coming in here, is kind of that untouchable figure, and it's my job to uphold that.
Yeah, and I think that's normal, right? I think that happens in every aspect. When I was a brand new officer, the chief of police was this larger than life figure that you were almost, I hate to say scared of, but like intimidated by. And then after a while you realize, and as you rise up the ranks, you realize they're just humans too, right? And I think the lesson there is not, I mean, obviously you have to respect the rank and respect your elders and respect people who are a little further along on the journey. But I think the lesson there is we shouldn't put anybody on a pedestal, right? Because we're all just humans, we're all just men. And whether they have it figured out in some areas and have gotten promoted or advanced in whatever it is, they're just men and human beings like the rest of us, who have their strengths and their weaknesses. So I think it's important to know that, yes, to respect the rank, but not to put them on a pedestal. One, because when you put somebody on a pedestal, they're inevitably going to let you down, right? Because they're humans and they're going to make mistakes. And two, you put them on a pedestal and you kind of feel like maybe you'll never be able to reach that level, and it's just not true, right? You're living it out now. 2 years ago when you got to the Marine Corps Barracks DC and you were a first year, like you said, those guys seem larger than life, but now you are those guys, right? And from the other side, it comes with a huge responsibility, right? You have an image to live up to, or a responsibility, not even an image, right? Because it's more than just an image; it's a responsibility to live up to. You are leading these young men, and that's important, right? You will affect their 2-3 years in the silent drill platoon, right? And you want that to be a positive experience.
That's one of the biggest things when Captain Jones, our platoon commander, was selecting the next assistant drill master, which then would be the drill master. He kind of explained to us that it's not just a decision for this next year coming up, and as a individual on the platoon, you basically affect the platoon for 8 years, right? Not just the 1, 2, 3 years that you're on the platoon, but it also affects those guys that come after you, that you're going to be in charge of your next however many years in the platoon. It's going to keep trickling down. It's not just going to affect the years that you're on the platoon.
Yeah, you have a legacy, right? Because you're teaching the people under you how to lead, right? And then they're going to lead, and then they're going to be leading people who they're teaching to lead. So you have a legacy. So that is a huge responsibility. Yeah.
You think on the flip side of things, those guys that do get in those positions, I think it's possible for them to put themselves on a pedestal, and what kind of the negative effects of being in a leadership role and putting yourself on a pedestal is.
Yeah, I mean, I think it happens, right? And whether it's ego or so, two reasons that somebody in a position of authority will say, we'll put them on a pedestal, I think, is one, could be ego, right? They think they're better than everybody else, or they're more important because they got there, which is certainly not the case. Or two, it's out of a lack of self-esteem, right? They overcompensate for that. They think it's, I don't know if you're familiar with imposter syndrome, right? But we all experience imposter syndrome when we I experience it as a wrestling coach, right? As first year college wrestling coach. It's like, man, sometimes you think, oh man, do I belong here? Right. But somebody believed I belong there. And if I let that imposter syndrome overtake me, I could see where somebody would overcompensate, right? They feel like they have to have all the answers. As leaders, we don't have to have all the answers. We just have to know how to get them, right? It's okay. One thing that I think young leaders and new leaders, not necessarily young at age, but new leaders, mistake they make is they feel like they have to have all the answers, right? And they have to have it all together, and you don't, right? You have to be able to get the answers, right? But it's okay as a leader to say, you know what, I don't know. But it's not okay to follow up and find out and get the answer. So the answer, if you don't know something, hey, I don't know, but I'm going to find out for you and get back to you. And then the key thing is to keep your integrity. You got to follow through and get back to the person. But I think, sometimes you get in a position and you put yourself on this pedestal because you think you have to almost, right? You have to be better. You have to be, have it all together. And it's just not true. And just none of us really do. And you'll gain more respect if you show a little transparency that you don't have all the answers and you don't know everything. The guys underneath you will respect you even more.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things I've learned this past year. Working a lot with the platoon commanders, asking a lot of questions that may not be my expertise, but feeling like I owe them an answer. Where, in the beginning of the year, it's like, trying to piece together an answer instead of, hey, sir, let me refer to you to the subject matter expert, or, hey, sir, let me go talk to him and I'll come back to you and give you an answer. That way, because there's times when, sir asks you a question and you're trying to give him your best answer, but the answer is completely off because you really had no idea what you were talking about, and you just make yourself your credibility is in question at that point.
Sure. If they know, right? They know when you're making it up. They know when you're full of it, right? So it's okay to not know all the answers, right? Like the example I always use in law enforcement is I didn't know every criminal code in the book, right? But I knew where to find them, right? I knew where to get the answer. So it's a similar thing. You don't have to know the answer; you just have to know where to get it and be able to get it.
Yeah, I had something happen to me today, um, which I thought I knew the answer to. So in the Marine Corps, it's kind of like a big deal of knowing where everybody's at and having physical numbers of everybody. And so I've been doing that all year. So we have like this lounge that we can meet in to talk to the sergeant major of the barracks. So I get our numbers. 35 was what I was understanding the numbers were. And then Sergeant Major walked in the room and he asked us what counts on deck were. So I confidently told him 35, thinking like, he's going to be impressed. And then he called it verifying. Um, so we all counted off individually, and there ended up being only 28 people in the room. Um, so I felt like I embarrassed myself a little bit, but we came up with a better solution going forward. So hopefully that won't happen again.
Yeah. So what did you learn from that lesson there?
Well, I learned to verify. Right, you can't always trust what people are telling you, right? Because you go to the squad leader, whoever's representing that squad. Hey, what are your numbers? Well, I'm 7 out of whatever. I'm 8 out of whatever. All right, well, maybe I need to actually check and see if you're actually counting to see if you have all your guys. Wasn't really sure what to tell the platoon commander, platoon sergeant, other than, hey, I messed up. I didn't
Yeah.
really have like an answer of how I messed up or what I did wrong, other than actually verifying that
Yeah.
those numbers are correct.
I think that's the best thing, right? To come up with reasons or excuses, you're just diminishing again your credibility. It's the simple answer is I messed up. It won't happen again. Kind of funny story from the police academy. We had to keep a notebook in the police academy, and this is computers were around. I'm not that old, but you hand wrote your notes, right? And then you could retype them or rewrite them. They had to be neat. And one day that I had fire watch and I just didn't get my notes done. And there was like 7 or 8 of us in the class that hadn't gotten their notebooks up to par. So the assistant director of the academy was like laying into us, and he was talking to each of us individually. And fortunately I was the last one to go, and I could hear him they had a trailer where their office was, and I could hear him, everybody giving him excuses, ripping him and he was literally ripping him a new asshole, scream and yell at him. That was his job. Like he took that part of the being the heavy, the bad, him and the director were good cop, bad cop. He was bad cop, and he took it really serious. And it came up for my turn, and he went through the notebook, found the most recent section that wasn't up to date, and said, why is this not up to date? And he was like, getting ready to yell at me. And I said, sir, no excuse. It should have been done. And he had nothing to say. I literally stopped him in his tracks, and I kind of saw the director out of the corner of my eye, laughing, because he knew that I had gotten him, and that he was prepared to yell at me and lay into me. But that was a good lesson as a young man. And really, it was the truth. There was no real good excuse other than it should have been done. Everybody else got it done. I didn't. It's really just the right answer when you mess up. It's that extreme ownership that Jocko talks about, right? It's taking accountability for everything that happens in your life. Stuff happens, reasons happen, but in the end, it's whatever happened, whatever mistake is made or whatever choice is made, it's on us as individuals. There's always, people say I had no choice. There's always a choice. It's whether you're willing to accept the consequences or not is really the choice you're making.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing I had to learn too, right? Because when I would mess up, or when I mess up, my natural reaction is to provide insight on, hey, this is what led me to do this, but ultimately learning that that's not taking accountability for your actions.
Yeah, and I think in the heat of the moment, it's about taking accountability. There's a time for insight, right? It's you guys. I don't know if you guys call them in the Marine Corps, call them after action reviews, but what I do well, what didn't I do well, what will I do better next time? Is a real just simple 3-question after action review. But that's the time for the insight and what could be. What are you going to do differently next time? At the time, in the heat of the moment, it's not the time to trying to explain or give insight. It's, I messed up and it won't happen again. And then, sometimes the boss doesn't want to hear about how you're going to fix it, right? They just want it fixed. So, depending on what kind of boss they are, they might not want to hear it. They just want to know that it's going to be fixed. And the more you do that, the more credibility you build. And, I think, in your case, from what I know, and, I'm obviously not down there, but I've met a few of your bosses, you've built some credibility there. So as long as it's not a continuous problem, just accepting responsibility and, making sure it doesn't happen again, it is enough.
Yeah, I think the one good thing we've been able to do is not hold grudges against people. We started implementing this thing called Man Up Monday. So every Monday we'll go down to the field, we'll get in a big circle. Everybody will chop it up, like I forget what they called it in football, but you just chop your feet, and then one person at a time goes in the center, and they say whatever they messed up that week. So on Monday, I'll have a good one.
Yeah, it's a you probably never saw it. Seinfeld, airing of the grievances, the Costanzas, I think it was, or I think it was the Costanzas at Christmas. They had an airing of the grievances, and you just got it off your chest in how you messed up or what you were mad at. And I think that's a good practice for you guys to have, right? We not any squad that I was on, but some of the squads in the police department had a very similar thing. They'd close the door of the muster room, and people would just get things off their chest. And I think that's healthy, right? I think it's a good lesson for you and for everybody, just in relationships wise, right? Because when we don't get things off our chest, when we don't admit our wrongdoing, and airing of the grievances may be a little different, because I might be like, hey, Vince, this is the problem I have with you. But when you're not communicating, a lot of resentment builds up. I always say most problems can be solved with good communication.
To add to that, I think a lot of problems can also come from bad communication.
Right. Yep. It's a misunderstanding. It's a misinterpretation. Like, and when you're not on the one end, when you're not willing to ask for clarification, you make assumptions. On the other end, when you don't kind of explain yourself or communicate well, you leave a lot open, right? And your message doesn't get received, right? I always say there's 3 parts of communication: what was said, what was heard, and what was meant, right? And usually, those 3 things are when there's a problem, those 3 things are not in alignment, right? So when you can get those three things in alignment, what was said, what was meant, and what was heard, that's good communication.
I think what also plays a role is perception is reality. How you have to understand how people perceive things. It's a big thing going around in our platoon right now is perception is reality.
Yeah, and that's so true. It's the a little bit of the history of the police department with me, and how in the beginning of this current chief's tenure, we'll say, him and I didn't always get along, or I wasn't always the officer he needed me to be, and he had a perception of me, and his perception was his reality, and it was my job to change his perception. Right, it was my job to let him see that I could be the officer he needed me to be. It wasn't his job to change his perception of me, because I wasn't giving him any reason to change his perception of me. So I think it's important that we understand, people's perception is their reality, and we have a choice there, right? We can choose to allow them to have that perception of us and not have it affect us, or accept the consequences of it. Or like in the case of the chief, like, he's the chief of police. He, whether I like it or not, he affects how my career goes. Right. So it was my job to change his perception of me, or remain, as a patrolman, and not rise up through the ranks like I did.
All right, I want to shift the conversation a little bit. So I got another question for you. I've gotten a little bit of insight, but want to know what your thoughts were when I told you I wanted to join the Marine Corps.
So, and it didn't surprise me that you wanted to go into the military, right? We kind of always knew that was a huge interest of yours. Um, you know, this is for the audience, not for you, because you know all this, but you were in the Civilian Air Patrol. I mean, I think it was like your 10th birthday, you got a full, um, you know, fatigue outfit, right? You got real
Yeah.
fatigues and combat boots, and uh, um, we have that picture of you dressed up with your little sister, uh, and you could tell she's not really enjoying playing army with you. So the fact that you wanted to go into the military was not a surprise, right? I kind of thought maybe it would be the Air Force, because you were in the Civil Air Patrol, and you talked about possibly being a parajumper or paratrooper. What do they call them? Parajumpers.
Uh,
Um,
Pararescueman, I think.
Pararescue, right? So
Yeah.
I wasn't surprised that you told me you wanted to go into the Marine Corps. Um, I'm into the military, but I was a little surprised that you wanted to go into the Marine Corps, which I certainly didn't have a problem with, and would have been proud no matter what branch you decide to join. Uh, I was a little surprised, or a little unsure, when you told me you wanted to graduate high school early and leave early. I wasn't. You kind of called my bluff, right? You came to us and said you wanted to leave and leave early, and I said, yeah, well, if you go online and do the work and get the work done to graduate early, you can do it. We'll sign the papers. And not gonna lie, there's a part of me that wasn't sure you were going to put the effort in, because I know how much
Yeah.
you didn't love school, right? So, but you proved us wrong, and in hindsight, after, I wasn't surprised, right? Because you've always been a kid who, um, when he makes up his mind, commits to something and doesn't look back. You don't have this, and you told me this recently, and I knew it to be true. Is you don't really have this shoulda, coulda, woulda mentality. You make a decision, and you move forward with it, and you live with it, and that's something admirable. Because I didn't something that I struggled with for a lot of my adult life was the shoulda, coulda, wouldas. Right, I put that all behind me now, but for a lot of years I was a shoulda, coulda, woulda guy, and it's just not healthy to live in that realm. And it's uh, at 51, I realized that all the shoulda, coulda, wouldas were not what was supposed to happen. Right? God had a plan for me, and every decision I made, and every choice I made was part of the plan, and put me right where I am today, and which is a very good place.
To be fair, though, online school is a little bit easier than going in person.
It may be, but I still didn't have faith in you, full faith that you were gonna follow through with it.
Yeah.
Um, but not only did you, I think I got it done a little earlier than expected.
Yeah.
You were determined.
And
You were God.
yeah, not very many people were confident I'd be able to do it. I told you when I went to go talk to Coach George's team, he introduced me as the guy he didn't think would make it through Marine Corps boot camp.
Yeah. Well, listen, you had some, and I don't know how much you want to talk about it, but you had some issues with the football team, right? And which would certainly cause some doubt, and did in my mind. I think you and I talked about it a little bit, um, and but the bottom line is that's another decision you made, um, and stuck by it, right? And you made it because you knew that was the best decision for you. And again, that's a quality that at 17, not a lot, I mean, listen, a lot of guys in the Iron Council, a lot of 50-year-olds don't have that kind of conviction to taking care of themselves and doing what's best for in their best interest, right? And you knew that decision was in your best interest for your own mental health and well-being. And again, that's admirable at any age, let alone 17, 16, right? Or were you
Yeah.
already 17? You were 16?
No, I might have been
Yeah, you were
17. Yeah.
17. You were 17. Yeah, you were 17. But still, at 17, that's admirable to be able to make that decision for yourself and know that it was the right decision for you and your well-being, and stick to your guns and take whatever consequences were going to come of that. Because you thought there'd be a lot more consequences than there were, right? You kind of thought like, oh, I'm out of the house. Uh,
Yeah.
and that certainly was not the case, right? But you knew what was best for you, and you were willing to take those consequences, and that's going to serve you, 10 times over in your life, having that mentality.
I think the biggest lesson I learned during that time was that the decision you have to make isn't always the decision that you want to make.
Mm,
Because I feel like
that's
the good.
good. I was just say that's powerful. I like that. The decision you have to. I'm going to write that down. Go
I
ahead.
figured you would have already heard me say that before, but I've been able to rely or look back on that moment, realizing that in future times and more recent times, and being able to make the right decision, knowing that it's not always going to be the decision that you want to make.
Yeah, and that goes along with um, the right decision isn't always the easy one, right? That's the same kind of mentality, um, and that's again a tough thing to do. It's you do the right thing because it's the right thing, and if it's hard, that usually means it's the right thing, right? If it's a hard decision, and I know that was a hard decision for you, that usually means it's the right thing. If it's an easy decision, then and if it's between something easy and hard, the hard's probably the right decision.
It's definitely hard to walk away from football, especially in the middle of the season.
Yeah,
And I never really, up until recently, never really had an itch or anything like that. Or I mean, the first year I didn't even want to pay attention to football, and then more recently, I kind of been thinking about how I could definitely play on a
yeah.
college team.
Yeah, I've noticed that. I've noticed that you've taken a little bit more of an interest in football again, and which is great because anybody who knows you knows that what the love you had for that sport and how passionate you were about it and the effort you put into it. I mean, that our neighbors used to call you coach. When you were 5 years old, you would go out and you'd have a whistle, a football. You'd blow the whistle, you'd kick the football off, you'd run it down, you'd run it back, then you'd huddle up and you'd be you would be every position on the field: the coach, the kicker, the quarterback, the receiver, the kick returner, and they used to always get a kick out of you being out there, and then and this is everything you do, right? You put your full heart in it. You studied so much film that and I'm not just saying this because you're my son. I would put your football IQ above most high school coaches and probably most college coaches. You just have this high football IQ. So, it'll be back in your life someday in some shape or form, whether it's as simple as coaching your kid's Pop Warner team or you have a career coaching after you get out of the Marine Corps. Football will be back in your life because you're true. How do you know you truly love something? You let it go. And if it comes back, it's true love, right? This, as corny, as cliche as that is, I think that'll be the case with you in football. And you know, um, you may never actually, maybe you will. You're still young, but play again. But you'll be involved in the sport of football again at a high level because, you know, I think that's the type of person you are, and when you go for something, you go all out.
Another question for you. It may be a little premature to answer to ask the question, but when was the moment you realized that I turned into just called a young man?
Yeah, you're right. You're not a man yet. No, I'm teasing. Listen, there's rites of passages for men, right? And you truly, when you got out of boot camp, that was a rite of passage for you at that point, and I don't want to get choked up here. Um, that's when I started looking at you differently and knew that you were truly a man, right? Like that was a rite of passage, and you made it through something that, you know, what a very small percentage of people make it through, right? And yeah, I think, we have a kind of quote unquote rite of passage in our family of, going to the mountains and hunting, right? And it's certainly a rite of passage, but does it make you a man? No, right? Not necessarily. But the day I watched you graduate from boot camp, and the hearing your drill instructors talk about you was probably the day I started to consider, didn't see you as my little boy anymore. You're a young man, and I'll still kick your ass, but that doesn't make you any less of a man. Not, Sure. All right. So I say that I'll still kick your ass, and what I tell that to most people, that I tell you that, and the reality is I'm not so sure, right? Um, one, you're a Marine and you do a lot of defensive tactics training and a lot of what do you guys call it? McDonald's, McMap,
McMahon.
McMap. I'm gonna get my ass kicked by every Marine down at Marine Corps Barracks, DC now. And funny enough, I'll tell a story that came home the one day, and my wife is and Vince are in the living room, and she says, Vince, show dad that handshake, show dad that handshake. So I think he's going to show me some like secret silly handshake or something like that. And I go to shake his hand, and he does some kind of wrist lock on me, and truly, truly hurt me. And I almost punched him in the face. I'm glad I restrained, but that's how much he hurt me. And listen, I don't think he was trying to hurt me. I don't even think he realized. It's just, Vince, you're a man now, right? And you have man strength, and you're not that little boy that couldn't hurt me anymore. And listen, I am getting old, as much as I don't like to admit it. But yeah, it's funny, not funny for me, but it's also, listen, as a father, this is what we want, right? Any good father wants to see his children, but definitely his boys grow up to be young men, independent, and able to protect, provide, and preside for themselves, right? My goal is to get you fully functioning and out in the world, and contributing positively to the world as a man, and you've certainly done that. And uh, you know, whether people like it or not, the protect is part of it, and I have no doubt that you can protect yourself. You'll be able to protect your future family, and right now you're capable of protecting this country.
Yeah. What makes it even worse too is I was thinking the complete opposite. I was thinking like you're going to be ready for something, so I was going to have to, do it like I mean it. And then you went in all loosey goosey, and I heard your wrist pop. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I fucked up.
Yeah, my wrist hurt for months after that. Yeah, well, I thought I went in loosey goosey because I thought like, oh, I need to be loose because he's going to show me this handshake, and I need to be able to let him do it. Would you have hurt me if I went in tense and ready to go? Maybe not as bad, but I think that was a pretty effective move.
That's why I was expecting you to be like that. So I was like, if I'm going to do it, I got to do it like
Yeah,
I mean it.
yeah. And typically when we horseplay like that, we do you know get after it. But I just didn't think that was what was coming. That's my excuse anyway. I wasn't ready for it.
All right. So we've been talking about a little bit of manhood here, but I want to take it back and ask you, what is the funniest memory of me as a kid?
So I don't know if it can be considered a memory because I seen it on a video. So I was searching through one of my old laptops for something, and I see these videos that, from your days. This podcast thing is not new to you. You've been recording yourself for as long as you've had a camera. And I come across these videos that you must have used my computer to download. You were too young. You didn't have your own computer then. And I watched some of them, and one I watch, and it's a video you're upstairs in your room, and you're just like cleaning your room or packing a bag or something like that. You must have been packing a bag because we were getting ready to go, and mom yells up to you, "Hey, Vince, can your sister use your, whatever cinch sack or backpack?" And you're like, "Yeah, no problem." And then you get real close to the camera and you lean in and you're like, "I hate when people borrow my stuff." So that right there exemplifies Vince as a little kid, right? He has a little bit of it for those. I'm going to date myself here, and actually, it's before my time. But for those of you who have seen or remember Leave It to Beaver, he's got a little bit of Eddie Haskell in him. He's that sweet, kind kid when the parents are around, and then he's a little bit of a little devilish. Maybe not so much as an adult, but as a kid, a little devilish when the parents aren't around, right? And then the other one is that video of you asking telling Nicholas, I don't remember the game, but you're walking outside and you're like, "Hey, Nick, play some game." And you're like, "I'm gonna play it too, and I'm gonna kick your ass." "Well, you'll probably beat me, but I'll kick your ass," or something like that. Like, so I don't know if those are necessary memories because we see them on video over and over again, but certainly funny stories and just kind of they both kind of sum up who you were as a kid.
I'm glad we didn't find those videos until years later, especially the first one.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure we would have found it as funny if we found it right away, but you might have been in the Marine Corps when I found that video.
Yeah, that wasn't too long ago. You found the video.
Yeah.
I got one more question for you.
All right.
What do you want your grandkids to know about you someday?
That's a good one. What do I want my grandkids to know about me? That I was a man of integrity, that I lived by my values and a set of principles, and that I always took care of my family. Right, family is one of my core values. It's probably my number one core value, and I want to pass that along to the next generation. It's very similar to what you talked about when Sir told you that you're going to affect 8 more people or whatever it was, or 8 more generations of Silent Patrol Platoon guys. I want this legacy that we're building, that quite frankly your grandfather showed me, and I'm sure maybe I didn't know my grandfather on my dad's side, but certainly on my mother's side, they showed me what was good, what it meant to be good at being a man, right? And there's a difference between being a good man and being good at being a man. And your great grandfather, your grandfather, they showed me that, right? We don't come from a long line of conversationalists.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Your grandfather certainly wouldn't be on a podcast with me or you. But what I realize now, and I didn't catch even as a young man in my 20s, I didn't catch it, and I wish I did, but that he really showed me what it meant to be good at being a man through his actions. And that's more important, right? Actions speak louder than words, right? And from a leadership standpoint, we want to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. So although, I wish your grandfather and I had some more conversations, I wish you and I had some more conversations when you were younger. You're still young. You're a young man. So, maybe we can have some of those conversations through this platform, and maybe this will open up some of those conversations. But, to answer your question, I think I want my grandkids to know that family was my number one value and priority. And I live by my principles, and I pass them along to you and your siblings, and create a legacy, right? I don't want to be remembered for the things I did. I want to be remembered for the way I made people feel.
Do you want one more question or no?
Yeah, sure. When you choose, whether it's
what's the hardest lesson you had to learn the hard way?
I'm not sure if it's the hardest lesson or it's just a lesson, but I think it's an important lesson, right? I think, and I mentioned this earlier, that every decision you make is on you, right? It's that extreme ownership. The sooner you take accountability for your life and the decisions you make, the better your life will be. Um, I think when you decide that, you know, you're gonna own everything and stop playing victim, right? And stop thinking, well, this is happening to me because, you know, because this guy doesn't like me, because this happened to me. Um, and you start owning it, and you start accepting that the decisions you made put you in this situation, the better your life will be. And here's the reality, and here's maybe the lesson, is that if every decision I made put me where I am, and I don't like where I am, the good thing is I can start making decisions to change that, right? If I'm a victim and I act like I don't control the things that happen to me by the decisions and the actions I took, then I can't change them, right? That's a mindset thing, but I'll be stuck in that victimhood. But if I accept that every decision I made put me where I am right now, and I don't like where I am, then I can change that by making better decisions. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. I think you get a lot of perspective on that once you're put in those leadership roles, right? Because when you're the lower guy, you tend to think like that kind of victim mindset of, oh, this person's doing this to me. But then you get in that leadership role and you kind of just see how, as a leader, you don't really have a personal vendetta against anybody, feel or feel the need to go out of your way to do something to somebody, and you start realizing that, maybe I was being treated that way because of what I was
Yeah.
doing, right?
Yeah, because of what you were doing or because it needed to be done, right? The one thing, as I rose up in the ranks of the police department, I got a better understanding of why we did certain things, right? I think that's why, as a leader, it's sometimes we feel like we shouldn't have to explain to the people we lead, but when you can, you should, right? There's autocratic leadership and democratic leadership. Autocratic leadership is like, in your case, you're on the battlefield. There's not a whole lot of time to explain why something needs to be done, or why you're telling somebody to do it. But if when you're back at the barracks, and you have some time to reflect, or in our case, like, you're back in muster, that's when it's time to be a democratic leader, where you can explain, hey, this is why we do it, right? One silly example was, as a midnight patrolman, they would ask us to go out and count the street lights that are out. And I always thought, like, what are we doing this for? Is this some kind of punishment? What did I do wrong that I have to count street lights are out? But then I find out, as a lieutenant, that there's a reason we do that we make these reports to PSE&G so that they can fix the lights, right? And so there's a reason for it. Doesn't necessarily make the job any more fun, but when you know there's a reason behind it and why you're doing it, it's easier to do, right? So I was never explained that. It was just the supervisors I had were very autocratic, right? Hey, go out and do this. And you didn't know if you were, like I said, am I being punished? Like, why am I doing this? But when you explain, and it's a little easier to accept. So I think, I totally lost my train of thought, but yeah, I think that's important, that um, as you rise up, you start to understand a little bit more why we do things. And um, I think from a leadership standpoint, it's important when you can to explain those things.
Yeah, that's what Sir calls your whiffum. What's in it for me?
Mm,
And he's done a good job of it, and those below him, like myself, have been able to implement that into things, because we deal with that a lot in the Marine Corps too. Just doing a lot of things that seem pointless or stupid, but there's always a reason why behind what we're doing.
yeah, it gives you buy-in too. Like, I like that. What's in it for me? It sounds like a little selfish, right? Maybe, but it's not. It gives it when people know why they're doing it, or what's in it for them, or what's the benefit of it. Maybe it's not even what's in it for you, but what's the benefit to the group. It gives you buy-in to doing those things. So again, whenever you can explain that, it's important. I have one question for you. I didn't come as prepared for you as you did with questions. If there's
All right,
one
go ahead.
thing you could change about me growing up, what would it be? And this is full disclosure here. No, you don't have to hold nothing back,
It's a hard question because, contrary
because
to
there's a
your
lot of things
belief,
you've changed. While you're thinking, I'll just say that I appreciate that. Though I don't think we were perfect parents, I think um, you turned out okay. Maybe we save that one for the next episode.
Yeah, I don't know. Be coddled more? I don't know.
Would it be coddled more?
Yeah.
You want to be all right.
Be pampered a little more.
Pampered a little more. All right. Well, listen, your mother and I think you're spoiled, so I don't know. I don't know if we might have to agree to disagree on that one, but I get what you're saying. Yeah. Listen. The one thing um, that I think for you and your oldest brother is we were harder on you than we were your younger siblings, right? And I think that just came with maturity, right? I wouldn't change. I think it's still important to have discipline and expectations, but I wouldn't disagree that I don't know if coddle is the right word, but maybe a little bit more grace and lenience, and maybe realize that some of the things that you got in trouble for weren't as big of a deal as we thought they were at the time. But I get what you're saying.
And that wasn't really too serious of an answer, but
Yeah,
I would think a more serious answer would just be not being more open, but being more approachable. Whereas you could think back on times where I wanted to talk to you about something that was going on or your advice on things, but sometimes just felt like I couldn't.
yeah, and I get that. I certainly wasn't the most approachable person, and I hope I've worked on that over the years, and I'm better now. But I tell the story about I was the father that could come home and either clear the room or make it a good night. If dad was in a bad mood, everybody would just scatter. So I get that, and hopefully that you can come to me with anything now, and that I have those regrets, and you can't really go back and fix things, but you can do it right moving forward. And hopefully you
And I,
learn from that with your kids, right? Be a little bit more approachable, be a little bit more open to having those conversations.
yeah, I think that's all I can ask for too, right? I think a lot of times people try and look back on their past and think maybe not hate is the word, but not want to have a relationship with somebody anymore because of the past. But
Yeah.
really, what matters is what you're going to do with the future that
Yeah.
you have.
Yeah. I mean, listen, father and mother wounds are real things, but as adults, it's time to take responsibility for how we react to them, right? We can't control other people. All we can control is how we respond to them, right? And that goes in the moment, and that goes, 10 years after moving out of your parents' house. It's if you hold on to that victim mentality, you'll never get past it, and you'll never build that relationship. So
Yeah. You want to wrap it up?
yeah, hey, it was great talking to you, and enjoyed it, and I look forward to future episodes.
All right. See you next time.
Love you.
Love you too.